Jeff, welcome to Q.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tom.
Nice to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
So right now, you're sort of awash in screen adaptations of your books. CBC is adapting your graphic novel, Essex County, for television. Mm-hmm. There's a screen adaptation in the works of your superhero comic book series, Black Hammer. Yep. You're the executive producer of the horror series Gideon Falls, also adapted from your comics.
Yeah.
And there's a pilot episode based on your Sweet Tooth story making the rounds.
That's right, yeah.
Basically the entire world. I think the entire adaptation world is busy with your work right now.
Yeah, it's been kind of nutty.
On top of all this, you're writing for DC. That includes the series Joker's Smile. That's just what's going on right now. And if we venture back a few years, you worked with Gord Downie on the graphic novel from his Secret Path project. But as we return to the present, somehow while all of this is going on, you found time and inspiration to write a new graphic novel called Frogcatchers. Where did you possibly find the time to do this with everything I just mentioned?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Honestly, the drawing comics is still sort of the thing that keeps me sane amidst everything else. It's kind of like my anchor. So my Monday to Friday, I try to at least 4 or 5 hours a day just draw and do that, because if I don't, I kind of lose it. So, I just do that. It's kind of very disciplined, and my writing kind of happens in between all that somehow, But Frogcatchers was even more sort of squeezed in because I was actually drawing another comic at the time called Royal City, which was like a monthly comic. So that was a pretty intense deadline every month drawing that. And I sort of burnt out on it, just the discipline of that and the grind of it. And I took a couple months off last year around the beginning of the year and just kind of got my sketchbooks out and started just fooling around and just sort of, I needed a release, something that wasn't for publication, that was just for me.
And kind of going back to the basics, right? Going back to like what brought you to this.
I didn't have a script. I didn't really have, I've been writing drawing from pretty tight scripts lately, but this one I didn't. I just had a kind of a vague idea and just sort of let the story unfold, and it became Frogcatchers.
Which is probably kind of how it started when you first started.
And totally, Essex County was like that. I just was feeling it out as I went. There was no script or anything.
Can we talk about Frogcatchers a little bit? Because I don't want to. I was just saying to Patrick Watson, I don't want to imbue too much meaning on your work. I do ultimately want to let the work speak for itself, but I can't help but notice that, while I was reading it, it felt like some meditation on death or getting older. Am I on to something there?
I think it was my midlife crisis book. I was just about, I guess it's funny. I did it in January, February of last year. So it was like a month before my 40th birthday. And I think leading up to my 40th, it just became this sort of thing in my head. And I was thinking a lot about mortality and getting old and kind of freaking out about it. And then, of course, the day that you have your 40th birthday and it passes, then it all just kind of goes away. And you're like, I'm the same person. It's all fine. But I think there was a lot of anxiety and stuff about that for some reason. I guess I just sort of built it up in my head. And this book was kind of the release of that, just sort of a meditation on getting old and memory and childhood and the things that kind of, how as we get older, we're still kind of the same person inside. I still feel like the same person I've always been. I don't feel older inside. It's just, so it was kind of about that. How we're sort of linked to our younger selves, and yeah.
I mean, that's kind of what it is. I mean, I'm not going to give too much away, but it's sort of like a younger version of a character interacting with a sort of a midlife crisis. A midlife character who then kind of sees an older version of the same character.
Yeah, it's sort of these literally kind of embodying the different stages of your life through different characters interacting with one another in this sort of strange journey of the book.
You use the word release. Is it a release? Is it therapeutic to write this kind of stuff for that sort of anxiety you were dealing with getting older?
I think that's how you deal. I often hate talking about my work. Because
welcome to Q.
Yeah. Not with you, Tom.
Oh, I appreciate that, Joe.
No, but,
thank you very much. You can't see this, radio listeners, but I just slipped him $5 across the table. Please continue.
I mean, the work is itself is sort of how I deal with whatever I'm experiencing in my life. So talking about it is kind of seems like you're going to. I don't know, take away the muse or something. Like, I don't want to analyze what the work's about or whatever, or talk too much about it. The work itself is what I have to say about it, So.
Yeah. But do you find it, like, let me ask this then. When you sort of are existing in a very kind of dark place to write this thing, because I can't, because the graphic novel itself is a little dark,
Yeah.
How do you feel, about an hour after you write it every day?
Very good. Yeah, all my work is pretty dark and sad, but I'm not generally that kind of a person. because I think I get it all out, you know.
But it's not like a 15-minute residue afterwards where you get a little...
No, you get it out. Yeah, I mean, you're experiencing, generally as I'm drawing something, I'm experiencing whatever emotion the characters are, but then it's just sort of gone. Yeah, I don't dwell on those, in sort of the sadness or darkness that my characters often live in. I think that the work itself kind of gets that out of my system so I can be a functional husband and father and member of society, somewhat functional. Anyway.
Your graphic novel, Essex County, you mentioned, is being adapted into TV here at the CBC. It's set to start shooting next spring. Essex County, about a fictional version of a rural Ontario community that you grew up in. You've described it as your most autobiographical work. So therefore, like, how involved are you going to be in the show?
Very, yeah. I'm show running it, and I'm writing the majority of the episodes. So, yeah, intimately involved. It's been a real experience trying to take something I did, I guess 10, 12 years ago now.
When you were how old?
It was 2005, so I don't know. My math's not good enough, but yeah, you know, and then sort of reevaluating those characters and sort of that stuff now, like at a different point in my life, and kind of bringing something new to it. It's been interesting, and because I usually, when I finish a book, whatever it is, I never really look back. I don't reread my old stuff or even look at it. It's kind of done, you know. So it was kind of weird to unearth something from a decade before and dive back into it deep. Yeah,
I can tell that the art itself. I mean, we just spent a little bit of time talking about the actual act of sitting down and writing this thing, writing Frogcatchers or writing Essex County is paramount. You know, it's the most important thing, and it's something that you need to do. You know, it's something that is kind of what you are. But I can't help but think when you adapt one of your works, which we've been talking about, you've done a lot of. You know, you have producers, you have, you know, editors,
and other writers as well.
Other writers as well. How do you do with all that? Like, how do you do with giving up control?
You know what? I've done the book all by myself and done it exactly how I was going to do it. You know, already it exists and it's not going away. So it's easy to let go and do this as like a separate thing. This is a different incarnation of it. And I'm not precious about it because it doesn't change the book. The book will always be the book, you know?
Right.
And that just frees you up to try to make it what it needs to be a really good television show, which is a very different medium, I'm learning. and it's a very different way of writing for television from comics. And it's kind of freeing to kind of go back and have other people sort of reevaluate it with me and find new things in it now.
I mean, that's nice to hear. I've heard from a lot of people who don't share that opinion, who say like, "Oh my God, it's excruciating that my novel I wrote is being turned into this movie that I have no control over."
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing is like I have a lot of control over this one, you know. So I'm the one doing it. So if it's going to get screwed up, it'll be me screwing it up.
But kind of everything. But I mean, we
but
mentioned
there are
a bunch
other
of
projects that I'm not as directly involved with, and that you do have to just let go, because if you can't control it completely, you got to completely let go or you'll go insane. Yeah.
What's that process like? Is that something you have to kind of say to yourself? Is that something you have to...
I'm too busy to worry about. Yeah, I just let it go. Like I said, you know, I'm so happy with the books the way they are, and I'm still doing the books and have the freedom to make those comics what I want them to be. So it's not hard to let go of the TV or movie adaptation because it's not my version of it. And, you know, I get to do my version and exactly the way I want. So it's easy to let go of the other thing.
You know, I thought about you when I saw Martin Scorsese talking about comic book movies recently, when he said that they were like theme parks, you know, not like cinema. And I was just thought about you because I know you write these beautiful graphic novels. You also write, you know, superhero stories. Your work's being adapted for the screen right now. Like, what do you make of that? Does it all kind of feel the same?
Yeah,
way?
well, I kind of get where he's coming from, but you know, the thing is, it's this thing of lumping comic books all together. You know, there really are. It's such a broad and diverse medium, just like cinema or anything, and to categorize the Marvel movies or superhero stuff and make that sort of represent all comic book adaptations or all different kinds of graphic novels isn't fair, you know. So, and I don't think he was trying to say that. I think he was speaking specifically about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which has become this behemoth. But
sure, yeah. I guess it just made me think about how we can devalue certain forms of art.
Yeah,
you know?
I think there's still a lot of that with comics because most people think of comics as superheroes, you know, and as sort of stuff for kids, and it's obviously not. But I think, you know, I look at my own son who's 10 and his sort of classmates and stuff, and the new generation of readers growing up, graphic novels now are just such a big part of their, and such a mainstream part of what they read. Like they read all kinds of stuff, you know, and that's the next generation of readers, and they're not reading superheroes, they're reading all kinds of stuff. And so I think it's going to change. It's sort of, there's that older generation who kind of looks back and just sees Spider-Man or whatever and thinks that represents all comics.
But you, let's be fair. I mean, you have one foot in each world. I mean, that's why I think you're the interesting person here, is because you also write superheroes. You do write, comics as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I don't hold that judgment some people have that it's just for kids or whatever. With superheroes, I think the superhero genre can be extremely rich and can say a lot about us as people if done well. Like anything. So, and I've always loved the superhero kind of world and the history of superheroes, and that's kind of what I explore in Black Hammer, is kind of taking that whole history of superhero comics and kind of grafting it onto the real world and real human experiences. And that it's a great vehicle for metaphor and for telling really good human stories as well. So
I think I'm just sensitive too, because I like country music so much. I know that might sound silly, but I know people who kind of snub their noses at country music on the radio or something like that.
Right.
And I'll think that, my God, I've meditated on lost love in a country song the same way I have in a Radiohead song or something like that.
That's the thing. It's like, who are we to judge what someone gets value from, there's just so much of everything out there now available for everyone to read or watch or listen to. If you get genuine joy from something, who are we to judge, I just think superheroes have a lot of value still, even though we're so saturated with them.
But it still must be nice to be able to sit down and write something like Frogcatchers.
Yeah, it's great to be able to do both, kind of do the one thing and then completely leave it behind and do something really intimate and personal. And I think that's my favorite part of the career that I've managed to build, is that I get to do both of these things and kind of treat them equally.
One of the joys of this show is I get to talk to people like you after it's all done. Like I get to kind of be the finish line. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I feel like putting a piece of tape across the door to the studio.
Right.
Because once it's all done, typically this is the first place people come, especially in Canada, to talk about their work.
I thought you meant my career was done. Jesus.
That's the next question, Jeff. Yeah. But what I realized, as a musician, I spend a lot of time talking to musicians about practicing and discipline. And I've had musicians say to me stuff like, I have a guy I know who won the MacArthur Genius Grant, considered to be one of the greatest musicians of our time, said to me, if I don't practice 3 hours a day, I go backwards.
Right.
And I thought, how that's amazing at that level. So I'm interested for you, when you're actually in it, doing the more tedious kind of lonely work. What kind of discipline does it take to do what you do?
It's like that with drawing for me. Like writing, not so much, because I'm just always writing. I feel like I never stop. So you're always thinking of story and stuff. You never need to exercise it, But drawing, if I take a break, or if say I go on a vacation or something with my family and come back after a couple of weeks, it's like you need to almost relearn it again. It is a practice, so you kind of need to do it a few hours a day at least, or else it's just like it takes so long to get back in the groove and get back into sort of feeling it and stuff.
Can I ask what that looks like? Do you go by yourself and sketch things? Or
no, I wish I had time to walk around and sketch things. No, it's usually me in my studio just struggling through pages that I have to throw away and start over again a few times until you get one good drawing, and then you kind of get your confidence back again. But that never really stops. It is a practice for sure.
I just wish there's a part of me that sometimes that wish we did this a little bit more when we talk about the arts. Like we talk about, how does it feel to get your work adapted? How does it feel to to be able to make a living as an artist? But I'm also intensely, I want to be real about the actual amount of, if you don't mind me saying so, kind of boring.
Yeah, well, I think that's the trick, is like with anything, I get a lot of people will come up to me at conventions or whatever and ask how you break into comics, and the truth is it just takes a lot of hard work and disappointment and discipline and but they don't want to hear that. They want some magic pill they can take and suddenly be publishing comics, but it really is just it's a discipline. It's work. After
your friend, and I guess our friend, Gord Downey, passed away, the first person we got on the phone, he died about 5 minutes. The word came out that he had passed about 5 minutes before we went on the air.
Oh, yeah.
And we were kind of scrambling to put a show together, so we just kind of texted our friends who we could get really quickly. And I got Max Kerman from Arkells on the phone.
Okay.
And I said, Max, how are you responding to this? And he just taught me that it was a lot of work. You just got to work a lot. You got to work and work and work and work, and you'll find some joy in it. But I'm learning that I think the work itself can be joyful.
Yeah, I mean, the work is what it's all about. I don't really care that much about the finished product. Like I before we came on the air, I think I mentioned that I don't reread my old stuff or look at it even. It's if you don't enjoy the doing, then what's the point of doing it?
Yeah.
Getting a published book is often. I mean, it's kind of nice to see it on a shelf or something, but who cares? I'm on to the next thing because it's all about. It's the joy of creating that keeps you going. That feeling you get when something's really coming together, or a drawing's really going well, or story things start to like coalesce into something that feels good. That's what you do it for.
Yeah. So Patrick Watson was just talking about that.
Yeah.
Like those moments on stage are, I believe he used the word orgasmic, but they can give.
I
those
would
moments.
never use that word.
Not in a million. A Canadian public broadcaster, Jeff.
It's just disgusting.
I know. His new book is going to be entitled No. Jeff, thanks for coming in.
All right, thanks.